but it's 7:32. So we have a quorum. So I think what I'd like to do is call the meeting of the Light Board for July 14th to order. And just quick reminders for folks, we're continuing to use the chat function and raise your hand. And also, I think as Dave has shared, the video recordings for the last 2 minutes from June 10th and 24th are posted to the Minuteman YouTube channel. So if folks are interested, they can see those. I know we're still working on those minutes, but speaking of minutes, I know Alice, you distributed the minutes from March as well as June and June 24th. I don't know that you got feedback on all of them, but are we ready to vote on the March minutes?
I believe we're ready to vote on the March minutes. We were ready, I think, the last time with a late edit. And those edits were included in this version. So I think we're ready to vote on March 11th.
Okay. Well, I will entertain a motion for the March minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, Peggy? Okay, so do we have a roll call on this as well for every vote for video? Okay, so Alice?
Aye.
Hi, Peggy?
Aye.
Yep. Lynn?
Aye.
And Wendy, yes. Okay, so those are approved officially. And then should we hold on the June 10th and 24th minutes, Alice? Because I don't know if you've gotten feedback from everybody. I know I still owe you minutes.
Oh, you sent some?
No, I haven't. I still, they're in draft. So.
Yeah, I haven't heard yet from other folks, so I'd wait
Okay.
until the next meeting.
Okay, great. And as a reminder, the next meeting is August 12th, following September 9th and the 14th on our regular schedule. So I'm assuming everyone is okay with August 12th. Any concerns?
So I have only one question about August 12th. Will that leave us time to think about what we need to do for a town meeting? If the next meeting would be just before town meeting. Are there reviews of presentations or budget or anything that we want to look at?
That's a good question. I did see a draft agenda for the select board, knowing what's going on the consent calendar, but I don't know if that's final. I didn't watch the last select board meeting.
Mic on?
Dave, do you know if the consent calendar is final?
I haven't heard.
Okay.
Matt, I know they're working out the details on, doing
Okay.
the outside.
Okay.
So Mike Lawson has his hand up. I'm going to allow him to talk.
Yeah. Mike, did you want to share a comment?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, no, this consent calendar isn't finalized.
Okay.
The joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the Select Board was held yesterday, yesterday afternoon, where we reviewed the proposed consent calendar. And then yesterday at 4, the Select Board reviewed all of the same articles, but the consent calendar, as you know, is the moderator's decision. So she's taking into account and will produce a consent calendar. But I suspect the one that we posted at the meeting on Monday will likely be it, but it's not finalized.
Okay. So Alice, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. So Alice, I think we will definitely make sure that we have that on the agenda for next meeting. And if there's materials in advance, then we'll have to share those just to remind folks what those topics were that have our interest in them. We did review some potential items from March, if I recall, some items of interest.
Yeah.
So we'll have to remind people about what those topics were. Okay. All right. Okay, so moving on the agenda, Dave, do you want to give your update?
Sure. So, in terms of our operation, nothing's changed. We're still on 2 teams, and we will be for some time, but everything seems to be working out smoothly. On the recruitment side, we completed first round interviews for the CIO. As a reminder, we had 94 candidates. We interviewed 7 candidates. We've narrowed it to 4. finalists. So they're going to be brought back for a second round interview. All have a very strong skill set. So we're looking forward to moving on to the next phase in that, but making progress, which is great. Municipal action plan, utilizing information and data provided by CMLP staff. Energy New England has submitted CMLP's first municipal action plan to the DOER on our behalf, pursuant to the requirements of residential conservation services regulation that was implemented in April of 2017. The MAP includes a description of CMLP's 2020 RCS activity, including information on home energy assessments, rebates, and ancillary services offered for 2020. Map submitted by MLPs will be published on the DOE's website, and going forward, E&E will submit quarterly reports on our behalf, enabling DOER to determine if the MAP outcomes established by DOER are being met. So that was pretty big.
Is that available for us to review or take a look at? This report?
Yeah, I think it's on the website already.
Okay.
But yeah, we can get it out and make it easier. Residential assistance rate. Before the pandemic, we had about 146 customers on the residential assistance rate, and we did see an uptick over the last couple months. There was a 9 additional, so we have a total of 155 customers on the residential assistance rate at this time. At the last Light Board meeting, we discussed if there was a way we could financially help small businesses, community, whether it be through a discount rate or a credit on their bill. And so we took a good look at that, and we found that whether credit or discount rate, just for small businesses, that would open us up to rate discrimination with the DPO if someone filed a case. So if we were going to do something, we'd have to do it for all classes to be consistent. So, that's not great. I also inquired with all the other MLPs if they're doing anything in that area, and found that one MLP is doing rebates, higher rebates if they buy local. So for example, if someone were to buy a refrigerator in town, they get a higher rebate than if they stay outside of town.
Nice.
So that's the only thing I learned that people are doing. Granted, the community that's doing this has much higher commercial, there's much more businesses to buy from than we have. But also, if you go on our website, you'll see the COVID financial relief for Concord businesses and residential customers. This is for customers facing hardships due to COVID-19 pandemic. We're asking them if they're having problems to contact customer service, either by phone or email and Concord Utilities at concordma.com. And so we can help them out. We do have packages that we can help. And, the team's been doing payment plans, things of that nature. But also worth noting, we've temporarily suspended disconnects for non-payments. And we've also suspended late charges. So those are some of the things that we've been doing during this period. The information on the website, I think, is helpful, and urge customers to take a look at that. The other thing I have is we did have a fiber outage yesterday. Another squirrel chewed through a fiber cable. It's a small area of town, but they were out for close to 24 hours. The fiber damage was in a conduit, so it was very difficult to find. He did find it, they got it fixed, and all the customers are services been restored. And that's my update.
All right. Well, thanks. And Dave, thanks for doing the research into the business discounts. That's helpful. That was an important discussion last month, so thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on, our next agenda item is back to the cost of service study. Dave, I don't know if you're want to give that update, or Laura?
Laura and I think we're going to do this together.
Okay,
Good morning, everybody.
good morning.
As you may recall, the board very helpfully made decisions on a number of important items that were necessary to determine prior to final rate design piece of the cost of service study project. One was defining a 2.5% return on rate base that will be used for the purpose of setting rates. The second was that the existing cross subsidy between the residential rate classes and primarily the G1 and G2 rate classes will be maintained. What that means is we will move other rate classes towards the cost of service, but so in other words, if the cost of service goes up or down, everybody's bills are going to go up or down, but that existing $2.5 million subsidy will remain intact. And the third item that the board determined was that we would craft a G1 rate that would be lower than the current rates charged by CMLP, and we would lower it to a level that would enable Concord's G1 rate to be in the same percentile of rank as the R1 rate class in the MWEC rate comparisons. So I've relayed all of those decisions to Baker Tilly. The next step is for them to generate draft 2 of their word report. This word report is not just the cost of service, but also includes the rate design piece. What you can expect to see from that is actual suggestions for what the rates would look like. So for example, they'll suggest, okay, time of use, we recommend in the winter, it be this rate for during these hours and that rate during those hours. And in the summer, it'll be other rates. So for each rate class, they will recommend specific rate schedules. They promised to send me that draft 2 by this Friday. Baker Tilly and I will work on that draft next week to work out any kinks. And then we will give it to the board by the 24th. That would give you a couple weeks, I think, to digest it and review it so that it can be discussed at the August board meeting. And then the idea would be to finalize the rates at the September meeting, which I believe would be in time for everyone on the current board to be able to vote on that item.
Great.
Can I have two questions or comments? It's Peggy.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say finalize rates in September. That'll be posted as a hearing?
Yeah. Yeah, if we're ready for that, we'd have to do it as a hearing, yeah.
Okay. And the other thing, your second point, the cross subsidization, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I'd like to relabel or characterize what we're doing here. And because your presentation routinely says, subsidization, and I guess it's a very, very common practice for commercial clients to pay more and residentials to pay less. And yeah, and for sure, it turns out to be subsidization, but I wouldn't like to label it in that manner, and I would like to move to something, a different way to characterize it.
Do you have a suggestion on a term that you think would be better that you'd like to use?
Residential rate and commercial rate, which is sort of what we've always used. without, go ahead.
So Peggy, maybe it's not cross-subsidization, but we're just acknowledging that the G2, G3 will not, we're deliberately not assigning it equal to the cost of service for those groups, right?
Right. And that's fine. I just don't want to carry on with this.
Yeah, because it's not direct. Yeah.
Yeah, with the subsidization vernacular.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like that term. I'm struggled to come up with something else that was still accurate. The trouble with using a general term like residential rate or commercial rate is, for example, when I wanted to relay that concept to you that we intend to move the customer classes with their cost of service as it goes up and down, okay?
Yeah.
But that existing differential in not being at the cost of service will be maintained. It just becomes a little mouthy and wordy to try to, to relay that concept without having a very specific term for that $2.5 million. What could we call the $2.5 million?
Well, will it always be $2.5
$2.5
million?
million.
Yeah.
That's pretty clear.
Okay.
No, but given our prior discussion about the adjustment factors and the subjective nature of some of those calculations, I think it's important for us to say that our rates are in line with our overall cost of service and leave it at that. When we looked at the numbers, we said we were essentially in balance with what it costs us to deliver energy to the town of Concord, all rate classes included. And that's the salient point that we want to maintain going forward. And if that cost of service goes up, we have to increase rates and vice versa.
So Lynn, I agree with you. I just, one question I have is when we talk about the relativity. So right now, the medium and the large general service are about 18 or 19% differential. Do we need to make a statement about retaining some percentage differential? Just from a guideline perspective. If we look back in 3 years, I want to make sure we understand how we were wanting to retain that differential. Is it just on those rate classes? And maybe we don't want to do that, but Laura, I don't know how you're gonna, when things go up and down, how you're gonna draw the line about where you're gonna change those rate classes. Do you use a percentage?
We're going to do it relatively so that $2.5 million is locked in as a fixed differential. So
So
not
you're
a
gonna,
percentage.
okay, so it's a dollar threshold that you're retaining.
Yeah, but that was that's my proposal. You guys get to decide, but that's what I had in mind.
Yeah, I would go with either the fixed, like what you just said, Laura, or a percentage differential, which we could calculate, and acknowledge it as our historical practice, common practice, whatnot.
And I don't have a strong feeling whether it's percentage or it's a dollar threshold. And Laura, if it's easier for a dollar threshold, then that's fine with me. And I
Much easier.
would agree.
Much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it could get skewed in future years,
Right.
and then we'd go back to it. So,
I mean, I guess that the only risk is that as we move from board to board, like we had trouble gleaning from the last cost of service study what we actually did,
Right.
what was decided. So if we sort of just refer to things generally, it may just be difficult in the future to figure out what you guys determined.
okay.
And that's why I'm asking, right?
So I worry about setting a dollar figure for a number of reasons. Economic factors change over time, and that may be a larger or smaller percentage of the growth in Concord or growth in the country. So a dollar figure bothers me in some way because it's a starting point, and it's a benchmark, but it's somewhat arbitrary as that number changes and the cost of business changes. So that's a bit of a worry. A percentage feels more comfortable to me. because then you're keeping it at a percentage difference. And I know that's harder to calculate and harder to maintain, but just as we had a dollar figure for the purchase of Rex, we ran out of money because we set a dollar figure. And so I'd hate for us to be out of line because we have set our rates based on a dollar differential.
Well, how about this? We use the fixed differential for setting rates, the rates we're going to currently propose in September. And then, of course, you're going to be able to revisit this anytime we do a cost of service study, which historically has been every 3 to 5 years.
But I think I completely agree with Alice. Why don't we put as a sort of policy that we'd like to keep it on the same percentage forward. And that way, Laura, just as you said, our minutes don't show or don't give you guidance after, you know, with board turnover and whatnot. So that would be consistent, I think, with how I and Alice are feeling.
Lynn, do you have a strong feeling one way or the other?
No.
I think. Okay. Well, I think to your point, Peggy, about a policy, giving it some kind of limit, and that's fine. So Laura, maybe we stick with that 2 million that you have now, and as we consider rate changes, we can consider this, you know, 18, I don't know, it's 18 or 19% as sort of an upper threshold that we wouldn't want to exceed. Of course, it depends on actually doing the cost of service study, which, you know,
Right.
I don't know that we're going to have the ability to do that annually.
So I think I'm going to need a little bit more specific instruction with regard to percent of what to proceed forward with that.
So right now, the medium general service had a 19.8% differential, and the large general service had 18% threshold. Peggy or Alice, do you want to comment on a particular percentage threshold that we should target? Is 18% was the large general service.
Let's go with 20. You know, and it's so long, and that's a top threshold, right? I mean, it's a round number. We're pretty close to it.
Okay, so can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the percent that you're referring to is the percent over or under a class's cost of service. That's the percent we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And then whenever we decide to raise or lower rates, whether it's due to Rex or any other reason, intra cost of service study years, in other words, in between the 3 to 5 years, do we need to try to rerun internally this cost of service to make sure we don't exceed that percentage threshold?
Good question.
Did the model that we got from the vendor give us a capability to do that easily?
In theory. It just requires the operator to be able to perform it. The model can do it.
Yeah.
The question is, can the operator
Yeah,
do it?
okay.
Well,
I will learn.
From all the promises that we were made, it should be able to. And if you have to go back to the consultant to spend a day entering numbers, then fine, no big deal.
Okay. So basically, we're saying never let a rate class.
No, we never say never.
Oh,
A rate
guidance-
class, the differential rate
guidance-
class should be
Our current policy,
20%.
Over
current
the
policy
cost.
is, yeah.
okay. So the policy is to not let a rate class exceed, have a cost of service differential greater than 20%.
Yes.
No, that's not. That is
Not
not
right?
how I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking of it as saying our policy is to have the commercial rate class approximately 20% higher than the residential rate class
But
per cost of service. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but
But commercial
The
as a rule
percentage-
includes the small general service, right? So that's
Right.
probably not the right term.
Okay.
Right.
right term.
So the
Peggy,
medium
right
and
now, we're
general.
not talking about a differential among rate classes. We're talking about a percentage difference relative to cost of service.
Right.
So the goal, I think, what I hear you saying, I think, is that the goal should be that no rate class exceeds 20% above its cost of service. The rate for that class should not go more than 20% above its estimated cost of service.
So to not allow a rate class to have a greater than 20% over the actual or estimated cost of service.
Yes.
And it only goes one way. It's only over. You don't mind if a rate class is more than 20% under its cost of service, because of course there's going to be people who are under if there are people who are over, because it all balances.
Sure.
Well, this
So just
this
one-
sets a threshold, a 20% threshold, so it can't go over
Above.
20. So it only speaks about it as 20% overage.
Overage. Okay.
I think. Other people have
Yes.
a different review?
No, I would agree, because your purpose is to help the residential that are almost 20% under.
Okay. I think I have it. It's the policy is to not let, let's leave it generic, not let a rate class have a cost of service, have
Have a rate.
a rate that is more than 20% higher than its cost of service.
Correct.
It's estimated cost of service.
So-
I kind of like that, having a wiggle room in there, because these are forward rates designed for several years out.
Higher than its estimated,
Estimated cost of service.
Okay.
So
Estimated.
this is articulating something way more clearly to the large commercial ratepayers. Just saying that, it's total common practice to charge large commercial ratepayers more than residential ratepayers.
Mhm.
And that's what we're talking about. Laura, are you giving me a look?
No, that's just what I look like first thing in the morning to everybody, Peggy.
I don't know. Anyway, so I'm a little uncomfortable, articulating it as, the way we have, but whatever.
Well,
It's
it's
fine.
talking about any rate class. It's not talking about the subsidy. It's just saying a policy is to not let a rate class, any rate class, have a cost of service higher than 20%.
Have a
Have
rate
a-
than 20% of its estimated cost of service.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I misspoke again.
Our large commercial customers that see this are like, whoa, I'm paying 20% more than what what it costs the town.
But it doesn't speak to the large commercial service. It just says any rate class. Our policy is to not let a rate class get higher than 20% than its estimated cost of service.
Okay, all right. I'll stand down.
And is there any challengeable dispute here on a policy that sets this in writing? I mean, can it be challenged that it's an unfair advantage or disadvantage to commercial interests in town or residential, whatever, since we're not saying which class?
But,
I'm thinking in
it
terms
says
of what
any
Dave
rate
said.
class. I don't think so. It says any rate class can be allowed that.
So it's the only reason that we couldn't offer a small business assistance rate, because it's specified as small business assistance as opposed to any rate class assistance rate was challengeable. Dave, maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, if, as I said earlier, if you're going to do something where you're going to give a credit or a lower rate to the small businesses, you would be subject to a rate discrimination case. The example I would use is, a medium medium general service customer that's right on the edge of the line has had the same impact that the small ones have. And they could file a claim that they're not getting the assistance, but the person next door that's a small business is, and that is rate discrimination. So that's the we need to be careful with and pay attention to, which we did, and we did our homework just to make sure. I mean, the reality of this, whether we like the words or not, this is a cost subsidy, and there's no other way to say it.
So this language is acceptable and is not, cannot be open to a challenge of discrimination of rates.
No, it's the policy that you guys are setting around rate authority. So I don't see it being an issue.
And we're allowed to subsidize / discriminate.
You can't discriminate.
That's my question. How is this not discrimination?
Right.
But
Are we discriminating
the
against
policy
commercial?
itself isn't directing one particular class. It applies across the board. So
Right.
I don't think there's a discrimination argument here at all. It's in the
Okay.
rate setting itself that we approve that's important. But the policy, I think, is clear. And it's important that we have the policy, so for the next time we do this, we understand what we did. So,
Yep. I agree.
so Laura, do you think you have this policy statement as we'd stated is enough for you? It's enough guidance?
Yes, guess with regard to the issue that Peggy brought up, yes, I think it is.
Okay, great. All right. Laura, did you have more to share? I know we started to get on the tangent around the
So,
policy. But
Yeah, before you move over to the rate hearing.
Yeah.
The board in the past has expressed an interest in understanding how its decisions with respect to like half a cent type increases impact rates. And so Dave and I put together a little interactive spreadsheet where you can take a look at a small residential, an average residential, and a commercial bill and play with, okay, if the rec surcharge changes from this to that, what does that do to a typical bill? And how does that affect our standing in that MWEC stack?
Well, I thought we would use that during the rate hearing because
Oh, okay.
I think it's more applicable there.
Okay.
So can I, if we're going to talk about that at the rate hearing, can I just have an understanding of whether this benchmark of our standing on the MWAC distribution of light plants is the right benchmark for us to be setting our own goals for? I mean, what is the value of where we stand on a list of 40 for MLPs or whatever the number is? Is that the appropriate goal, or should we have more direct goals about where we want to be?
I think
Those are relationships.
it could be one goal. And the reason I say that is because it's the most objective rate comparative evaluation that we have. It's performed by an independent entity. It includes not just municipals in Massachusetts, but the investor-owned utilities as well. And I think it's an important tool for the board to understand how attractive Concord is with respect to its electric rates relative to its neighbors. It could be just one input into your decision on how you decide to develop, and maintain rates, but I think it's an important input.
So my
It's
only
also-
concern is if we haven't evaluated what other rates, what other MLPs have done to achieve their standing, it's just places us somewhere in a pack. It doesn't have the analysis behind it to know whether this was, these are good policies that the other MLPs have in place and that we would want to emulate or not. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know how to read the MWEC. I always look at those. I've looked at them for years to say, oh, look, we're right about in the middle of the pack, or a little above, or a little below. It's got to be good. But I don't actually know that.
So
Maybe some of the policies are better on the lower end because they are supporting townwide goals or policies that maybe we should also be thinking about. So it's not strictly a positional statement.
So, Alice,
Yeah.
I'll jump in as a sister former select board member. There's so many levels And we aren't, I don't think Concord is driven to show the lowest electric rate to attract commercial development. You know, and I'm not sure the kind of commercial development that we would attract is attracted by lower electric rates. I mean, it's so I'm going to put that on side burner for a minute. I think that it's good to, you know, show that we're kind of in the middle of the pack, and I don't think our residents do or don't move here due to electric rates,
Right.
you know, compared to taxes. So, and then I think we also have, so going back to the commercial rate, I think we have the ability, I believe we have the ability to negotiate electric rates. And the only, you know, we go back to Virginia Road. I mean, that's just such a dinosaur. It used to be a real tax asset, and now it's, you know, and so maybe there could be a use out there, you know, an R&D use that was really high electric, and, you know, we could negotiate it. But is that sort of what you're talking about, Alice? I mean, you know, town-wide policy, not, you know.
But those townwide policies affect what our overall rate may look like and where we stand on the MWAC, which other communities may not be doing something similar.
Right.
So,
I think-
A lot
Al-
of other communities are negotiating rates. Yeah.
Lynn?
Sorry.
Lynn, you had a comment?
I'm sorry. I think what Alice is suggesting is if as an example, if 5 of the towns on the higher end of the distribution are there because they have a 20% surcharge for RECs or whatever the policy might be, we're comparing apples to oranges by looking at all MLPs together, not knowing what their particular renewables policies are, for instance.
much more articulate than what I said.
Is that what you were going for?
Yes. It's just whether that's, so is that the right benchmark for us
Yeah.
to be setting a policy around? Is our standing on the MWAC list?
Which,
That's my
Well,
only-
but I think it just forces you to ask the question, why are we different if we weren't in the middle of the pack? If we were on the top or the bottom, we should have a deliberate policy that explains that. And I think it gets to the same concern.
But
I
if we
think
are setting our
historically-
policy, go ahead.
I don't know that's our policy. I think what Laura's saying is it's one of several, it's a benchmark to use in our decision making. It's not the only one, right?
and we've been clear that, you know, Article 50, 51, you know, we have a clear mission to
Right.
not, I won't say not worry about costs, because that is in there, but
Yep.
to pursue a goal
Right.
of
Right.
clean.
That may move us higher or lower, presumably higher on the cost structure at some point.
Yep.
in the
Only for-
MWAC list.
Only for a while.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I'm just suggesting, that was my question. To acknowledge that if
Okay.
we use our standing on the MWAC list, it may be for good reason, because we are instituting policies that are different than what other MLPs might be doing. But if we maintain a benchmark, it's somewhat arbitrary. 'Cause I'd hate to make decisions that keep us in the middle of the pack, but don't help us achieve our goals.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, you know, as we continue to do what we've been doing, buying more RECs, renewable contracts, we will go up the scale on the MWAC, and, you know, I think that's okay, as long as people understand why. I mean, as an MLP, we do more than any other MLP, and, you know, we underground, we have rebate programs, we're going carbon free, so there's no other MLP that can say they're doing all the same things we are. And if that ends up costing us a little bit more money, it just needs to be understood. And so I think we just need to be clear with the message that if we do start going up the MWAC chart, that's why.
Dave, it might be useful for E&E, maybe they already have this information, but if they don't, to survey their clients so that we could put an asterisk next to the MLPs that are similar to what Concord is doing, so that we know who's doing RECs, who's, you know, what share of renewables are in their portfolio. so we could read that list with a little bit more of a discerning eye going forward. Is that something E&E already knows?
For their customers, I believe so.
Yeah.
You know, half of the MLPs are with MWEC, half are with E&E. So I can't speak for the MWEC ones, but, you know, as a, you know, MLP community, you know, we have spoken about this at the meetings, and not all the MLPs agree with, you know, how to handle regs. I mean, you know, we look at it as we know we have to retire them if we want to go carbon free. And, you know, we have to show that on reports and so on and so forth. But, you know, I think we need to be careful with that. That's all.
But Dave, is it information that we can start collecting on, you know, for ourselves only? Maybe it's not in those charts, but do they have information that we can share with the board around what different municipalities are doing?
Yeah, let me see if I can gather something for you. I'll check.
Okay. Then we can just use it as reference information.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good discussion. So Laura, before we go to the rate hearing, is there anything else that you wanted to review?
Nope. I think just so you understand the timeline, what we're anticipating for the next steps is helpful, and just reminding you of the decisions we've made. I will just point out that the decision to go with a 2.5% return on rate base, you know, will cause some upward pressure on rates. Because if you remember from the presentation, there was a top section that showed return before, net income before the return on rate base application and after, and before it was positive, meaning we had leftover money after we paid all of our costs. But if you included a 2% rate of return, which is lower than 2.5, there was enough revenue in 2020, but we had small shortfalls, like a couple $100,000 magnitude in 2021, and then it got a little bit bigger by 2024 and 2025. So just so you understand that the 2.5% decision will require us to raise rates probably somewhere on the order of ranging from 1 to 5% between 2021 and 2025.
1 to 5% of what? Of individual bills or across the revenue stream?
That would be the, I'm sorry, that I'm speaking to the rate increase in retail sales needed to meet the revenue requirement. The actual increase in the revenue requirement. Yeah, so that's the rate increase in retail sales needed. So that is how much money we're collecting from retail sales. That's what that percentage refers to.
In just retail sales? Okay.
Well, but I assume retail sales means everything.
Yes.
And so basically you're saying all rates on average will need to go up 1 to 5%.
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, that's consistent with our business decision expressed earlier about the rate of return.
Yep.
In my opinion.
And it's also, I think, consistent with maintaining reasonable rate increases, so there's no shock in one certain year. Because we've been making 2.5%, we can, bank it and save it and whatnot.
Okay. So, can I add a novice question? When I first started, listening to board meetings, there had been, correct me if I'm wrong, concern because there was a large fund already established of what might be called retained earnings. And there was concern about how much money was in that account. Do we run the risk of increasing that higher than what our funds policy had looked at as a response to maintaining a certain level and not over that for a fund balance from year to year? Are we just, I don't think we've seen a spreadsheet or a demonstration of what the 2% return on rate base or 2.5% on rate base would look like in terms of returned earnings or whatever you call it.
That's Alice, really good question.
And,
Yeah.
I think it's also, sorry, go ahead, Dave. You're gonna.
No, I was just going to say, we haven't put that together, a spreadsheet like that. Alice, we could, if you think it would be helpful.
Dave, can I just say, actually, I think it is on the spreadsheet that I showed you, the one with the top half and the bottom half. The 2% return on rate base that was used in the example collected about $800,000 to $900,000 a year.
I stand corrected. Thank you, Laura.
Sorry.
So 800,000 to 900,000 per year
That's it too. And you're
at 2%.
proposing, and we're proposing 2.5.
Right, so it'd be a little bit higher.
But can I also remind you, we have some other discussions, and this may be a budget
Sorry.
discussion around how we fund the CARES budget. So on a, when we do the budget review, there was a question about whether CARES should come out of rates or whether it should be funded fully in the budget. So, I mean, we have other impacts to that as well.
Yeah.
So, but I think, Alice, your point is very well taken. That was one of the main reasons why we didn't address rates earlier. Citizens were very concerned about increasing rates when we have retained earnings. So it's a good point. We'll have
But
to cross that bridge.
we did set up a retained earnings policy.
Right.
So,
Right.
okay.
Right.
Yep. Good.
Right. But what we haven't done is said how we would use it necessarily. So I think that'll be the next discussion.
And so I just wanted to see what the impact of 2 or versus 2.5% would be on that retained earnings policy.
Okay.
Really
So
good question.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think we are about ready to move into our suspending the rate hearing, to move into the rate hearing portion of the agenda. Can I entertain a motion to do that? We'll take a roll call vote.
I move to suspend the regular meeting and open a rate hearing for energy rate decisions.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, so now I'll do a roll call. Peggy, obviously.
Yes.
Yep. Alice?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, and I obviously agree as well. Okay, so moving into the rate hearing itself, Dave, it sounded like you and Laura had some information to share as part of this discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Laura, do you want me to open the spreadsheet now and go through that? Or do you want to? You're muted.
Yes, if the board is interested, why don't we show them the tool briefly, and then if they're interested, we can go through it, and if they're not, we can not go through it.
We're interested.
We love
Thank you.
tools.
Okay.
Okay, so right now you're looking at, it says our bill, and in C11, you can see that this customer uses 250 kilowatt hours a month, which is quite a small usage. I mean, we do have customers that use that amount, but I specifically chose one that was quite small just to show you the bill impact on a small bill or a small user. So over to the right in big red is what rec surcharge is assumed in the bill below. And right now we have a penny in rates. You can select, to increase it to 1.50 cents, 2 cents. You can look at what the full 2.5 cents that was originally anticipated would look like. And when you choose that, it will change the bill. So right now the bill says, what's it say at the bottom, Dave, 4609?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so if you want to change that rec surcharge, does anybody want to see what it would look like at a different rate?
Yeah.
Penny and a half.
Okay, so it went from
So
46 to
$1.30.
47. Okay, let's look at a little bit bigger bill. Dave, why don't you go to the R1000 tab? This is a customer that uses about 1,000 kilowatt hours. Oh, sorry. No, go back to the R bill. My bad.
Go back. That had all the customers on it.
Yeah.
You just need to change the volume up at the top to 1,000. Okay. And if you want to see what it looked like before the penny-and-a-half increase, you would want to change that back to a penny. So it was 167, and it goes to 172. And if you want to see how that changes our standing, you would go to the, why don't you change it back to a penny, Dave? Just, sorry, yeah, to a penny, so we can look at that first. So the 167, go to R1000. Click anywhere in the list. You guys don't need to look at that. All right, now our 1000 chart. So at the current penny, we are, and I'm sorry, Russell is highlighted. That's a mistake. I believe that we are 15th on the list. Is that what that says, Dave? 15
Yep.
Over to the left? Okay. So now if you change back on our bill, go back and change it to a penny-and-a-half. So we were at 15. And now we go to
12.
12. So it's just a little tool to see how changes in the rec surcharge would change a small and an average residential bill, and how that would impact our standing in the MWEC stack, which, as you pointed out, is not a sole determiner of what you want to do, but just may be a point of interest.
Yep.
I concur
And we know
with
that it's
that.
and we know that it's a point in time, because other MLPs could also be having similar rate hearings, looking at how they're going to support their growth or their initiatives. So it's a point in time, a snapshot.
I think this chart is interesting. Town meeting is used to seeing it. And, you know, that makes it a point of politics.
So Laura, are you good with this chart, or are the board members interested in seeing what the other numbers would do if we went up to 2.5, or are you guys good with this?
I'd like to see 1,000 kilowatt use at 2 or 2.5.
So this is 2.5, puts you in 10, at number 10.
So
And
that was not a huge change from 12
No.
to 10 for another penny and a half.
And what's the change on the bill, please?
Right.
so if we go back, 182 at 2.5, and
It's 167, I think.
yeah, versus
So
1.
that was one.
Yeah, the benchmark was 167, so now we're at 182, which I would characterize as a very small increase.
Yeah.
Agree. And this is a high user at 1,000, right?
Right.
I don't have a concept of what a 1,000 kilowatt hour user looks like. Is that a mansion?
No,
No,
Okay.
so I chose 1,000 because that's slightly higher than the average CMLP user.
Okay.
The
Okay.
median use is somewhere around 600 or 700.
Okay.
Okay, but the average is like 900. So that, there are a lot of customers with, there are customers with 10,000 kilowatt hours or more per month.
Mhm.
here's, or the median of 650 kilowatt hours, it's $107 as the benchmark. And then if we went up to the 2.5, it goes up to 115.
From 1 to 115?
Yeah, just over 1 to 117.
I mean, in percentage terms, that's a lot. But in absolute dollar terms, relative to a household budget, I would argue that $15 a month is perhaps, not the end of the world.
You have problems with that? Talk to Donald Trump. Anyway, never mind. I lost my train of thought. Never mind.
So I think what we're trying to do here is to kind of give you guys, you've asked every time we have a rate hearing on something,
Yeah.
what is this going to look like on the bill? And so we
Yep.
try to simulate this with this tool that Laura built. And I think it does a good job to give you an idea on what the impacts are going to be. What we're looking for here is to, we're looking to add a half a penny. So to go from 1 penny to a penny and a half for Rex, to purchase Rex. And that's what we're requesting the board discuss and ultimately vote on.
And Dave, would that become effective if we were to vote on that today?
No, not effective today. I would say I would make it effective September 1st because we have to do the internal working in the billing system. I wouldn't want to put that on Laura, Carol, to get that done in a week and a half, 2 weeks. I don't think that's fair.
Okay.
So is that for the Rex?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is increasing the energy charge by half a penny to kind of fall in line with the 4-step process of the proposal that the board looked at a number of years ago and agreed to. So we're trying to take that next step and asking the board for consideration on.
And have we modeled what the expected return, how much we would earn from a half a penny? And are we still going to vote again in January, which was part of the original policy, for another half a penny increase? So it'd be rate that becomes effective in September. 3 months later, we're voting again for a rate increase as the policy would direct us to do.
Well, I think that's a great question, Alice, and I think that's part of a larger discussion. Once you get the rate design back from Baker Tilly, the board's going to have to decide when they implement rates, and some of that's going to be timing because we have the meter discussion on what we're going to do with that, and if time of use rates are implemented, we need to have smart meters, and there's a whole bunch of pieces to it, but I don't think we can answer that completely until we get the cost of service study back. And you guys take a look at the rate design portion of it.
But Alice, to answer your first question, our net income will not increase at all because even though our revenue is going to go up, we are going to spend every cent of that increased rec surcharge on renewable energy. We purchase the renewable energy sometimes in arrears. So we figure out how much money we have and then we spend it. So we won't earn anything more.
So I'm just wondering, how much will the half a penny get us in terms of available funds to purchase Rex?
Like, what are the dollars? Well, half a penny.
Yeah, thank you.
What are the dollars?
It's about $800,000.
Okay.
So for the 4-month period, so you
Correct.
assume that 800 was for, okay, good. All right.
And just to put this in context, so we are currently contemplating an increase for the rec surcharge. We will in August and September discuss and then vote on new rates based on the cost of service study and rate design study that would probably go into effect January 1, I'm suspecting, the new rates.
Well, pieces of it may. I mean, we specifically asked the consultant to design us a time of use rate, which
Right.
we're not able to implement right now due to equipment.
Right.
So there may be pieces of it that you implement, but other pieces that are implemented at a later date.
Right.
And Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, because when we gave input to the consultants, we had them assume that we would have these rate increases, right? The
Absolutely.
half a penny, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I move to approve the 1.5 cent.
I think
So we have to
I think you guys need to close the rate hearing.
close the rate hearing.
And
Well, I
then,
think- what,
well,
public comment?
then public comments, and then you can vote.
I move to close the rate hearing and return to the regular meeting.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay, so we'll have a roll call. Peggy,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Wendy, yes. Okay, so we are officially closing of the rate hearing and now open up to the board for any additional discussion before opening up for public comments. Any additional
No.
comments from the board?
My only comment was it was extremely well presented. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was. Laura, that chart was great. I'm sure that we'll want to use something like that again in the future. Be very helpful. So, all right. So do we have, I'm multitasking here. Do we have any comments from the audience?
Carlin.
Carlin?
Brian's been sending some in.
Okay, so I just called on Carlin. So let me just finish that and then we'll get to Brian. Sure.
Hi, folks. This
Hi.
is Carlin Reed, 83 Woods End. I appreciate the information and the graphs. It's been very useful. Keep in mind when you're thinking about raising a rate for the renewable energy charge, that you are also considering raising rates or may have an impact on raising rates from your cost of service design. So each little time you raise something up, keep in mind that the overall aspect. That was all my comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carlin. Okay, Brian? Brian, are you, you're muted. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, I added some comments as you were talking in the chat, but you did a great job. I love the spreadsheet, and I'm thankful we're moving forward on continuing to do incremental increases to get to 100%, to avoid rate shock and to actually decarbonize the portfolio. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other hands raised? I don't see.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just remind folks that at one point we did not want to vote on this. We were waiting for the cost of service study. So to Carlin's point, this was a deliberate action on behalf of the board to make this decision prior to the cost of service study. So just want to point that out. And part of that was because of the concern over accumulated reserves. But I think this is still the right decision and discussion to have. So, and I think I appreciate, Laura, all the work that you and Dave have done to put this in context. And I, for one, am certainly in support of moving forward with this rate proposal of a half a penny, and hope that we will review these rates again as part of the cost of service study. So,
That was the point of my raising the timing of this, right? When I thought we were going to do a rec surcharge vote 1 month and a new rate setting as a result of the cost of service study the next month, I thought it was silly to do them separately. We should do them all at once. But right. Given that the likelihood of the new rates from Baker Tilly's recommendations not going into effect until the first of the year, I think we need to go ahead on this. And then we'll consider the 1 to 5% increase or whatever it ends up being in August and September.
Yep. Okay. All right. Are we ready for a vote? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve a rate increase of 0.005%, 5 cents, to cover essentially for rec purchases and other energy purchase needs.
Second.
Okay. All right, we'll take any other discussion? No. Okay, so we'll take a roll call vote. Peggy?
Yes.
Yeah. Alice?
Yes.
All right, Lynn?
Yes.
And Wendy's yes. All right, great. Glad that we could finally make that motion. So just to recap, this will be a 0.005 increase in the rec surcharge rate. It will be effective on September 1st. And for the board's purposes, it will generate about $800,000 in funds for rec purchases for 2020, which when we will make those rec purchases is another topic for another day. So. All right, so that's excellent. Moving on in the agenda, Dave, we were going to move on and have additional discussions on metering.
Yep. So a couple pieces. Obviously, we're trying to circle back on the RFP to get a consultant in to help us put together the RFP for the purchase of smart meters. So that Laura and Carol have done a little bit of work on that. I don't want to say we're ready to go, but we're getting closer. So I wanted to get that back on the agenda. Also, we have, I shared with the board an email, I believe, from a customer that's requesting an analog meter. We don't have analog meters right now, and I don't know that the board has a policy on this, and we haven't really discussed it at all. So I thought it would be a good time to kind of put it on the table, because we're going to need a little direction on what we do. Right now, we have about 900 smart meters out there, and then the rest are all radio read meters. The analog meters are the ones that we would have a meter reader go out and read. We don't have meter readers anymore. And so one customer's requested an analog meter. And so I wanted to bring that up to kind of get the board's thoughts on that and go from there.
Dave, you said you had 900 smart meters out there, which I'm not sure what that means. Installed at customer facilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Already installed it.
And then analog, and is there something else?
Yeah, we have the radio reads meters. So those are the AMR meters. That's the balance. And then
And how many of those?
I have to do the math, but it's over 7,000.
And you're planning this smart meter program would change 7,000, give or take, meters over from radio read to smart meters?
Yep.
Okay.
So I don't know that we've talked about this yet, but if someone wants to opt out of this program, I know we would need to buy new smart meters for those who are going to do the time of use. What meter, would we just leave a customer's existing meter in place if someone chose to opt out?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, that would be the plan. If someone opts out and we have to do a truck roll, the discussion there would be, is the charge the same? Some other LPs have had a higher charge for customers that opt out because they physically have to roll a truck to read the meter with an employee. So that's something that the board would need to discuss as well at some point. I'm not suggesting we have to do that today, but those are some policy decisions that we need to start talking about and figuring out. And if a customer decides to opt out, and I do expect to get some customers to opt out.
Yep.
Do we leave the radio read meter? My preference would be yes.
Yep.
But we also know we have a group of customers that are interested in the RF issues and things of that nature. So if we get more requests for analog meters, we need to set a policy on that as well.
Yep.
So.
Dave, have there ever been analog meters used in Concord?
That's what we had before we switched to the radio reads. It's not common. Most utilities don't have those any longer.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a customer that sent an email in and actually sent some helpful information if we decided we wanted to purchase them. There's another utility in the country that has purchased some analog meters. So, we have some information on that, which is helpful.
And how is data collected on an analog meter?
You physically walk up to the meter and
Right.
type it into a device, and then you come back to the office and you download the information from the device into the billing system.
Can the homeowner take a photo and send it to the
I
light
think
plant?
we've lost Dave.
No,
Those are the glass meters with the spinning dial inside?
Yeah.
correct.
love those. Okay.
You can't take, a homeowner can't take a photo at a certain day and submit that in your bill according to that photo.
No, that wouldn't be an accurate way for us to get information.
Okay.
And likewise with those meters, reading them, you have to be very careful. I know it sounds like they're very basic, they are, but when they get close to a number, it's hard to tell if they're before the line or after the line. And so, you really
Okay.
know what you're doing.
Okay. I just didn't understand the technology.
So
So
there's
actually
lot of-
getting the meter is one thing, but there's an administrative cost, right? So would we entertain a discussion around an additional charge? Because you literally do have to send somebody out to their house, read the meter and come home and manually enter stuff. So it's not efficient.
I would forego it, depending on how many people sign up for it. I absolutely forego that charge for the political benefit of having the option. I mean,
Just acknowledging there's a cost that we're incurring as a result of
Yeah,
that as well.
yeah, but altogether,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's worth it. So we have 900 smart meters, 7,000 radio read meters, and we've all been getting a lot of information about, whether smart meters are worth it. So I'm happy to delay the project until we're a little more confident that it's going to be worth it.
So, the problem with delaying the project, it's already been delayed a couple of years at this point. And if the board's desire to go to time of use rates actually is what you guys vote on,
We need them.
do that without smart meters.
I know, I get that, but
It's our whole strategy. But the issue at hand is this one customer who wants an analog,
is it one?
So far.
right? That was the request. That's the purpose of this. I mean, part
Yeah,
of this
I think it's
discussion was really
safe to
one
assume
customer.
there's more than one who wants
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a small percentage, but you are going to have, a number of customers that, one, don't want to do time of use. And
Right.
in conjunction with that, may not want a smart meter or radio meter on the side of their house. And, and I'm not looking for you guys to make a decision on this today. I want to get this discussion started because there's a lot to talk about here.
Right.
Can I also just say there's the administrative cost of processing data from an analog meter, but there's also a loss of information. Any customer who opts out, we will not have their profile of energy use. And the more who do that, it's like a big black hole in our data set.
Mm.
So Dave, you shared the links to the, you shared some of that information with the board. And I think, was there a link in that information from the consumer about those analog devices that the board should read and review? I'm forgetting what was in the email, but do we?
No, I think there's not a lot to dig into there. I mean,
I didn't think there was.
I don't think so. I mean, it was helpful. It was helpful.
Yep.
Who's done what? But I think the email kind of speaks for itself.
Yep.
In terms of what the customer's desires are.
So, I mean, the RFP for the meters was a large project, and it was going to cover the variety of meters that we could install, including addressing the concerns of the RFR, right? From an options perspective. Do we defer this discussion and say really the RFR is what we really need to pursue at this point to collect the necessary information to make informed decisions?
Yeah, and that's the piece that, Laura and I talked briefly about. My hope is that we can get it out on the street, but also factoring in, we have, about 40% of the staff working on a day, and I want to make sure if we do it, that we can actually handle it.
Yeah.
while, providing essential services. So it's a tricky little piece, and we'll continue to discuss it over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And at the next meeting, we can provide a little bit more what our thinking is as to when we can put that out on the street to get the consultant on board.
But the biggest reason to delay right now is that we are not fully staffed to be able to handle distribution and review, right, and selection.
Correct.
Yeah. Because if we, yeah, okay.
I'm going
But
to
we're
throw in
talking
a
about
little,
it. Sorry.
a little different for this. If it's 1 or 2 customers, we don't know how many yet, right?
We don't.
So I hate to always be saying, no, we can't do it. I mean, we can do it.
Right.
Sure, we can do it. And, we want to be customer friendly. We're a municipal light plant, so they're not dealing with Eversource. So I would go to the more customer friendly direction. Don't need to advertise it. Hopefully this customer isn't going to, write to the paper and say, hey, everybody, you should do this. And if they do, that'll be a different story. But I hate to be a naysayer about something that I think is a reasonable request for certain people and will help our political position going forward.
Great.
Peggy, I think you're bringing up an important point in terms of information to the community. And I would ask that staff help us gather evidence, if you will, about what introduction of time of use rates has meant to other utilities around the country. By now, we must have experience recorded somewhere that we can cite in terms of more efficient purchasing patterns, perhaps even conservation results achieved by introducing tours, because that's part of the story, right? And we need to make that story available to customers as they're hearing about the different kinds of meters. I don't want to have a meter discussion without also talking about the benefits of switching to time of use rates.
Yeah, but we should make all the meters cost the same amount. Like I said, people expect their muni to be more responsive, and I don't want to just keep saying no. And I don't think it's an unreasonable concern or request. And if we just respond appropriately, I think we could eliminate, this issue may not even get traction if we are just nice to the people that are concerned about it.
And Dave, I know the radio meters, do they all have, there's not an alternative if in this customer's view that a radio meter would suffice, even if it was a different kind of radio meter, right?
Yeah, I mean, the request was for an analog meter.
Analog specifically, right?
Yeah, and a radio meter is not analog, nor is
Right.
So.
All right.
Okay. So maybe Laura saying a small extra fee, that's fine, but it's
added expense for the light plant to go out and read a meter physically.
well,
Something that
yeah, if it's
we need to think about.
If it's 1 or 2, I mean, we just upped the return to 2.5%. So, I don't want to, I don't know, I feel like we're just saying no for the sake of saying no.
But I don't think it's for the sake of saying no. I think it's a legitimate question, but I think it's the larger strategy that we need to address too, because this won't be the only customer. But I don't know that all customers will say they want an analog meter. They may not just want to.
Yeah, if it starts to roll up, then we'll have to look at it differently.
Right.
So we're still talking about a small percentage of the total number of homes and house meters. I think as evidenced by the public meetings that we've had and the public discussions on EMFs and concerns about radio frequency, So I think there should be options for people to opt out, whether it's
Right.
analog or not, and move
Right.
forward for those who are interested in moving forward.
And I think that's the larger discussion as part of the strategy.
Yeah.
So Dave, do you need additional guidance for this one customer? Do you want to
No, I don't need any guidance at this
Okay.
point. I just wanted to get this topic back on the table,
Yep.
meters in general, because, you know, I hate to finish up a cost of service and rate design study with
Yep.
no end in sight on smart meters.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yep.
you know, I think that was an important piece for us to get started.
All right. So
Yeah, but
for next month, you come back with some judgment as to what's the feasibility of moving the RFP forward, and, you know, when would be appropriate to do that given staff resources.
Yeah, we'll get it on the agenda for next meeting as well.
Okay.
Awesome.
And I guess, you know, I think you have in-house expertise. We're already looking at it. The whole purpose of the RFP was for a consultant, correct?
Yeah.
So do we need to consider additional resources that could help offset some staff resources to help move this forward? I don't know if that's an option. I'll just suggest.
Yeah, I don't think it's an option, but
I didn't think so. Okay.
I appreciate the idea behind it.
Right. Well, anything. Okay. Okay. Any other feedback on this topic? No? Okay. All right. So we can move on to any, I don't know if we've had any liaison updates. I know I don't have any. But do we have any additional public comments? People raising
Brian.
hands? Brian?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, do you mind if I show my video feed?
All right.
Hold on, I gotta make you on the panel if you're gonna do that.
Okay.
And
Well,
while you're doing that, Brian, I just want to acknowledge, Lynn, I know that you had a hard stop at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm
So
afraid I
you could
do.
drop- Yeah, let us know. Okay.
Okay, so I will just drop off when I have to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Brian, go ahead. Or Dave.
No, Brian's good now.
Okay.
all right, here we go. So I just wanted to share with you, I'm at my father's house, and 2 or 3 years ago, he installed a power wall. And this is what distributed storage looks like. It's just, you know, the solar inverter is there. You've got the battery here. I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
The one that says Tesla on it.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
that vision is good.
And it's
A little product placement.
well, it doesn't have to be Tesla, but you can kind of see the scale of it. It's a big box, but it's thin.
It's very,
Yeah. And this over here is the gateway that allows for the house to know when it needs power from the roof or from the grid and push it back. So I just wanted to show that and say thank you for adding the half penny. And also thank you for getting the discussion on meters. The AMI is critical. And as Dave put it, you know, years delayed, but that is a critical component to the strategic plan. And we can't do so many things until that gets done.
Yep.
So thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Brian. Are there other hands raised? I don't see any.
Yeah.
Dave.
Courtney Whalen.
All right. So Courtney, you're muted. You're all set now.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good morning. Courtney Whalen, 65 Dover Street. I want to thank you guys for taking the time this morning to discuss that meter option. You know, I would like to have the analog meter placed on my home, and I don't think this radio meter option is a good option based on information that came out at that October meeting. And I did, you know, I know that there's a couple other states, New Hampshire and Vermont, do allow customers to opt out at no cost from the smart meters and other meters. And I know that 22 other states have other opt-out options. You know, I would like to have you guys continue to discuss this analog, and I know it's not kind of this common thing that's easy to get, but I know that Sacramento Municipal utility department is providing analogs, and I did provide that information to David, that Landis and Gear is giving that out. But on the other thing, and I hear what you guys are saying about the smart grid and the time of use and gathering information, and I definitely see the benefit of that with climate change and everything. But I would still like the board to really look into that, like the hardwired options. We have fiber optic through most of the town, and to really look at completing that project and having hardwired versus this wireless options on everybody's house. So, and I know there's people in town that, would be willing to even help, like find funding and come up with funding to help, finish that project. I mean, we're so close to being done. Plus, I think with the revenue that you guys could gain from having everybody hooked up to fiber optic with, the internet, and, I'm an internet customer with you guys, and I think it's been awesome. But in the meantime, and I know you guys are, things have kind of gotten behind with the request for proposal, but I really would like that analog on my home. So that's it. But thank you guys for listening today.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Courtney. Dave, are there others with their hands raised? I don't know why I can't figure this out.
David Allen.
All right, David. Hello.
Hello. Good morning. Unfortunately, I got called away by an AC problem in the middle, so I'll have to go watch the video. In any event, just to round out this discussion about fiber, as has been said actually lots of times before, if we're to use fiber, it means it has to fall from the street into the home. And while that's happened for 15 or 20% of the town, that hasn't yet for the others. And that happens to be the very expensive part of the proposition, order of $1,500 a home, and you start doing the multiplication. We're talking about more than pocket change. We're talking about some serious money. As much as I, the person, certainly the proponent for the fiber to the home system, would like to see that happen, we can't avoid that not small detail in thinking about all of this. Enough, and as always, thanks so much for all you do.
Okay, thank you. And then Louise Bellinger raised her hand.
Hi. Hi, everybody. 179 Independence. Just to follow up on what Courtney said and what David said, being a big proponent of getting our fiber everywhere. There are a group of people who have volunteered over several times who would be helpful, who would like to brainstorm on how we could raise the funding and get our town up to speed with the fiber to all the homes. And the fiber is the backbone for everything that you're hoping to do in the long run. So again, just putting that out there. And if you want to ever meet with a group who'd like to brainstorm on raising money, let us know. Okay. And otherwise, thank you. And I look forward to hearing more about the meter conversation.
Great, thank you, Louise. Dave, is there anybody else?
No one else. No.
Okay. All right. Any other topics that board members want to raise today? No? Okay, well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Any second? All right. All in favor? Oh, roll call. Wendy, yes. Alice?
Yes.
And Lynn, Peggy, yes. All right. Thank you all. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Laura and Dave, for all your work. Appreciate it very much.
Thank
right.
you, ladies.
All right. Thank you. Good to see you all.
Stay well.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.